So I got asked by one of my amazing subscribers to make a video on the topic of vicarious trauma. Having been the victim early on in my career of vicarious trauma, I'm really passionate about helping other people in the field of therapy and counseling, the field of social work, and even first responders in how to deal with vicarious trauma, because we are all at risk of being affected by this, even nurses. So, who is at risk of vicarious trauma? Primarily, it is first responders, social workers, counselors, therapists, anyone dealing with a traumatized population regularly, anyone exposed to those stories, anyone exposed to firsthand, like people in the ER room or police officers, firsthand, that startle response inducing experience of trauma faced by others or those that we work with. So, what is vicarious trauma? It is a secondary trauma, and it can be the result of exposure, like I say, to traumatized individuals, hearing detailed accounts of traumatic incidents, or witnessing traumatic incidents in the workplace. Vicarious trauma occurs when an individual who was not necessarily a victim or recipient of a trauma absorbs disturbing aspects of an event. And this, over time, can lead to the traumas that they're exposed to secondarily becoming part of their own experience or their own reality. So, some precursors to vicarious trauma that you might hear about are compassion fatigue and burnout. And so those are signs that you may be moving towards a place where you are vicariously traumatized. I'd like to give my 3 suggestions today for how to avoid vicarious trauma in your own working career. And those are, firstly, my biggest tip on this is separating yourself. So, what does this mean? And I know we hear this a lot in our field, especially, Carl, get your butt out of the camera, especially as social workers and counselors, and for me as a clinical therapist. Don't take your work home. This is easier said than done. I work a lot with children these days, and so it's really hard for me not to take that work home. But a question that an amazing mentor I had asked me was, if you are taking this work home and you are tired all of the time, how are you effectively helping the people that you need to help? And that is something that I've taken with me and maintained for most of my career, that if I am at home worrying and thinking about the things I've heard that day, then I'm exhausting myself and I'm not effective in the role that I need to be in as a therapist to help other people process and deal with difficult experiences. So that's my first tip. My second one kind of relates, but it is different. So, setting boundaries for yourself and for others. So, knowing your own limitations at work can be huge, especially younger, like earlier on in my career when I was really young, a really young social worker. I started in my field at 19. Something that was really hard for me was to say when a client or a caseload was too much, or something that I couldn't deal with, or something that was triggering for me. So just being aware of your own limitations, of what you can and cannot handle. The other piece of that is taking those mental health holidays, taking vacation time when you need it, making sure that you are in the best mental space you can be so that you can help others. And that also falls under, as well, like setting boundaries about the kinds of work that you can do. Like if you have a significant history of, say, for example, sexual trauma, maybe it's not the best fit for you to be working with sexual trauma victims if you have unprocessed issues in those areas. So being really aware of that and being aware of what your limitations might be. The third one, and my final kind of tip on this topic, is self-care. So really maintaining your own self-care, and that can be like through diet, through meditation, through seeing your own therapist. A great one is pets. I have Carl, and he is a huge help for me. Being aware of your own relationships and healthy relationships, so making sure that those are healthy and that you do have those people you can talk to about vicarious trauma in your life. Because vicarious trauma shows up in all sorts of ways. It can kind of look like trauma or PTSD. It can be similar symptoms, really intrusive thoughts and behaviors. It can be that we have an enhanced startle response, so we're really anxious a lot more often. And so just being aware of how that looks and how it can present in your life, and being aware that when we get to that place of compassion fatigue or burnout, that we have really that we're so for me, I know that when I'm getting to that place of that compassion fatigue or burnout, I know what that looks like. So I start getting more irritable at work. I'm edgier, more emotional. I feel that I take things home and I think about them more, like the things that have happened at work. So being aware of what your signs and symptoms are of getting to that place where you're kind of getting burnt out, and being able to talk to whoever's in your life, or maybe it's your boss or your supervisor, or if you work for yourself, just kind of setting some limitations for yourself to say, hey, I'm having a really hard time with this, and I need some support. So anyway, that's my kind of tips and my 3 ways that I deal with compassion fatigue and burnout in my own work, and try and avoid getting to that place where I feel vicariously traumatized. So for me, those work, and that is what I do, but obviously we all have our own things. So if there are other things that I've missed, or symptoms, signs that I didn't highlight in this video, and I know that because they are different for everyone, please let me know and comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Facebook, www.facebook.com/youcounseling. Thank you guys. Bye, Carl. Bye from Carl. Oh, he's biting me.